Ro Khanna, everyone's favorite, somewhat opportunistic, somewhat progressive representative from the great state of California, got detained the other day in Israel by settlers, not even initially by the IDF. Take it away, Ro. Israeli settlers brandishing American-made M4s detained me and other Americans on my trip to Palestine. When the IDF arrived, they sided with the settlers and continued our detention. They made a huge mistake. You'll be hearing more soon. It's so cool how we are so cucked to Israel that they can cause international incidents, not even directly through, like, the will of their government, but, like, their marauding, like, brown shirt Hitler squads can detain a rep, and it doesn't even matter. Just literally just like random 16-year-old neo-Nazis living in the West Bank or whatever. Jesus.
I saw the arrogance in the eyes of those settlers, 21 and 22-year-olds with guns, laughing that they had detained us. The arrogance of those young IDF soldiers that my text.
Yeah, let's get the full bit. Ro Khanna is very media accessible. I know he's going to be talking about this for a while.
Being in the West Bank and in Israel is the first time that I have really been acutely aware of being brown. I feel like people have seen me first as brown, second as an American congressman, and third as an American citizen. I saw the arrogance in the eyes of those settlers, 21 and 22-year-olds with guns, laughing that they had detained us. The arrogance of those young IDF soldiers that my tax dollars are funding, having no respect for the fact that they were detaining Americans, no respect that there was an American congressperson in that bus, and laughing when
in any other time it would be an international incident. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable that, like, an internationally condemned group of neo-Nazis that are in violation of international law and American law can just detain a representative. The military shows up and sides with the settlers, and nothing happens. Nothing will happen. What happened to Ro Khanna shows more than anything how untouchable Israel's fascist regime think it is. Yeah, they've drank their own Kool-Aid. I can't wait for him to go on CNN and Dana Bash ask him if he feels he was, like, anti-Semitic to the settlers or whatever else. Like, I'll just say it. If the settlers had killed him, most American politicians wouldn't say anything about it. The most they would say is that they find it troubling and they want an investigation, but nothing would happen. If the settlers had killed him on camera, they would. I guarantee you, most wouldn't speak up. Yeah, they talk about Netanyahu.
Translator told them that there are Americans there and the American embassy is concerned. It is the arrogance of power, of a power that has had no accountability, total impunity, and has created a toxic culture of oppression.
Yeah, man, they're like brown shirts.
I've been to Israel before. We've met with Israeli officials. We've gone to Ramallah, met with the President Abbas, but I've never really gotten to meet Palestinians and seen the occupation from the eyes of Palestinians. And it was important to me to have an...
It feels like a presidential run signifier for me. I've said before, but if Ro Khanna runs, I would definitely support him. Not even because I think he's that sincere of a person or even that progressive, but because he seems to be one of the only people in the Democratic Party who believes in politics and understands that it's important to oppose, like, Zionism and pedophilia, but I repeat myself.
Curated, extensive look at the human toll of occupation. I'm certainly probably the first American politician who's been detained by the IDF and Israeli settlers. I mean, we were at a village that Israeli settlers had destroyed. They had destroyed the school. They had destroyed that village, and we were just looking at it. And these hoodlums come in with machine guns, an M4, an American-made machine gun, and they detain us. They block off the road. And then they call the IDF, and the IDF is on their side, not on the side of the Americans.
The Israeli military said troops and police officers intervened after receiving a report of settlers blocking vehicles near Kiryat Zanuta. Upon their arrival, the troops dispersed the Israeli civilians and allowed their vehicles to continue on their way, said the Israeli military. I believe them. Israelis police did not respond to a request for comment, nor did the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. That's so fucking crazy, dude. Not even the U.S. Embassy. We are so deferential to Israel that even the U.S. Embassy has nothing to say about the illegal armed detainment of a representative legally traveling. Fucking psychotic, dude. Huckabee's like just screening the phone call.
And what people in America are asking is, are you so bought and sold by the establishment and political donors that you cannot see human injustice? So if you're unwilling to speak up for Palestinian human rights, if you're unwilling to speak up against the genocide in Gaza, the apartheid in the West Bank.
It's a perfect representation of how, like, being anti-Zionist doesn't really have, necessarily at least, that much to do with Palestinians. Like, there is clearly something wrong if a U.S. rep can get detained by brown shirts and then by the military for no reason, and then there's not an international incident over it. The deference here is coming from inside the House. You don't have to be pro-Palestinian to be anti-Zionist. In fact, at this point, I would say it's almost a secondary cause, because Zionism is the chosen identity of a problem that is causing death well outside the boundaries of Palestine as well. Like, we're talking about such a larger problem here, you know? It's crazy. The idea that this is about Palestinians specifically, as opposed to a broader, like, systematic invocation of violence that absolutely directly affects the Palestinians, but, you know, ropes us all in.
Then you are morally compromised. And we cannot trust you to fight for Medicare for all, or to fight for workers over the billionaires, or to fight for justice and human rights in the United States. I'm strongly considering it, and I'm more resolved to consider it after this trip. We need a new moral direction in our party, a new moral vision that respects the dignity and human rights of people around the world.
Well, in response to what? What was the question? Yep.
We've been there for 30 years.
What does your husband do?
He works in our community center.
Just sort of a random cut of shots together in this DRM video. I wonder if the major national news circuits are going to have Ro Khanna on to talk about this, or if they would prefer to ignore it. The New York Times put out an article. The Israeli settlers had guns, and Representative Ro Khanna was scared. On Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Khanna, the congressman from Silicon Valley, who's exploring a 2028 presidential run, okay, just being direct with it, was visiting the ruins of Kibbutz Zanuda, a tiny Palestinian Bedouin village in the southern West Bank that was abandoned after escalating attacks from settlers and then demolished. Suddenly, a car of men holding guns pulled up and blocked the narrow road out of the village. The men began taunting the congressman and his team, swearing at them in Hebrew and Arabic. Oh, you know what they were saying about Ro Khanna. Kicking the tires of their minibus, according to accounts, photographs, and video footage from Mr. Khanna, an aide, and his security guard. The photographer for the New York Times traveling in a different vehicle also saw the interaction. Soon, a jeep with more men arrived. When two cars from the Israeli military pulled up, Mr. Khanna assumed the soldiers were there to help him pass. Instead, the soldiers smoked cigarettes, chatted with the men, and after the settlers left, moved a car to block the road, he recounted. I felt powerless in that situation, which is not an easy thing, as I have a lot of privilege in life, said Mr. Khanna, who was eventually allowed to continue his journey after calls to the U.S. Embassy and Israeli police. Imagine how people feel every day, Palestinians under the occupation, if they could make an American congressperson feel powerless for 90 minutes. Yup. I know you'd support Ro Khanna, but do you think he has good odds? Yes, I think Ro Khanna would win in 2028. Why would that be sarcasm? Why doesn't he have a private security firm following him? He did, didn't you hear? He had security with him. I thought we were voting for Vance. No, that's if Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris is the candidate. Do you think this incident might actually radicalize him somewhat? I don't think Ro Khanna is stupid. I think Ro Khanna is aware of the fact that Israel's always been this bad. You just have to lead the voters along the path that you're following. What he saw in the West Bank, Mr. Khanna said, convinced him the region's problems won't be solved just by replacing the Israeli leadership. One of the things that's made me realize is how hard a two-state solution is going to be in practice. It's going to require the removal of a lot of violent settlers. Mwah, love that. Yeah, we really need to give up on the two-state solution line, because like any second Palestinian state would just get destroyed by Israel immediately. We've tried this and it failed. That you need to like disempower the Nazi government. There's no way around this, you know? I appreciate the fact that Ro Khanna is just flatly saying like these people are fucking insane and they are an obstacle to any kind of solution in the region. In the southern West Bank village of al-Khair, he met with the family of Auda Hathaline, a well-known Palestinian activist whose work was featured in the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land and who was killed by an Israeli settler. On his final day, he visited a school where a 14-year-old was gunned down in broad daylight by a settler and met with Palestinian Americans who described stories of being beaten and threatened. Can a one-state solution actually work? Israel is a Nazi state. Israel has to be, like, crushed. What were you meant to say if like somebody back in 1941 was like, do you think the Third Reich has a right to survive? I don't know, man. Germany's around today. It had to be broken before it could be allowed to continue to exist, but like it still exists. Israel or Palestine or whatever is probably going to continue to exist. There will remain, you know, like millions of Jews there, which is fine. I don't have a problem with Jews being there. It's like everyone's holy land, I guess, except for the Hindus or whatever. I guess they have a different holy land. They're all about elephants or something. I don't know what they're up to. But like the state of Israel as it exists, it would be like asking if the Third Reich has a right to exist, you know? Whatever version of Israel or Palestine or whatever exists into the future cannot be one that is like in any way, shape, or form politically modeled off the existing Israeli state. So the UN needs to occupy. I mean, that's what I've said. I've said, like, yeah, the only like chance for peace in the Middle East at this point essentially kind of feels like a multinational or UN-led military occupation of Israel, while like the IDF is gutted, a bunch of people are sentenced for, you know, crimes against humanity, and you have to like just like tear it apart. Basically, you have to really, really tear it apart. The thing is, like, South Africa fell in line eventually because at the end of the day, South Africa has an overwhelmingly like an overwhelming majority of Black Africans, you know? Same thing happened with Rhodesia. What would have happened if, you know, white, like the Boers or whatever, they had been 50% of the population in South Africa? What if they were 70% and they kept warring with their local, like, you know, countries or whatever? It doesn't seem like Israel's going to stop on its own. Did Rhodesia have an air force? Probably. Probably had pilots who were wearing those gay little shorts, you know? Mr. Khanna described the visit as an uncurated Palestinian-led glimpse into the West Bank and is one he believes more members of Congress and potential presidential candidates should experience. It's crazy. It's insane how fucking arrogant Israel has gotten. Israel is on a path to its own destruction, in large part because they have failed to manage the PR environment. Like, Israel has gotten so high in its own supply that they've forgotten how tenuous their situation is, and they have stopped, even as the world is bowed down to them, even as Western Europe and America give them money and weapons and, like, completely unquestioned political support, still they squander it. They squander it. They waste it. Just the arrogance here. You know how much this is going to play into Ro Khanna's campaign? If Ro Khanna does run for president, this story is going to come up. Look at this. He left with some parting words for the Israeli government. Free advice to the Israelis. It's not a good idea to detain long-shot presidential candidates. Not how you're going to build goodwill with the next American president, whoever that is. They're going to kill him. That's aura, though. That's a solid parting shot right there, for sure. 100%. They are squonking it. Be careful who you make fun of in middle school.
Congressman Ro Khanna visited Turmus Aya in the occupied West Bank, a village with thousands of Palestinian Americans who have come under repeated attacks by Jewish settlers.
Palestinian Americans? Yes, is that true? Like a bunch of Americans who are Palestinian have moved over here? Like thousands? Thousands of people chose to do that? Okay, good. All right.
Khanna says he became a target as well, detained by settlers and the Israeli military for more than an hour, according to Reuters.
I'm certainly probably the first American politician who's been detained by the IDF and Israeli settlers. I mean, we were at a village that Israeli settlers had destroyed. They had destroyed the school. They had destroyed that village, and we were just looking at it. And these hoodlums come in with machine guns, an M4, an American-made machine gun, and they detain us. They block off the road. And then they call the IDF, and the IDF is on their side, not on the side of the Americans.
Khanna is on a 3-day trip to the West Bank as he weighs a potential presidential run in 2028. Support for Israel in the U.S. has fallen significantly, especially among Democrats, where a progressive young wing of the party has been highly critical of Israel.
I saw the...
No, older Democrats are also critical of Israel. It's like across the board. Like every subcategory within the Democratic Party is critical of Israel. Mamdani has more support from Jewish New Yorkers than Netanyahu does.
The arrogance in the eyes of those settlers, 21 and 22-year-olds with guns, laughing that they had detained us. The arrogance of those young IDF soldiers that my tax dollars are funding, having no respect for the fact that they were detaining Americans, no respect that there was an American congressperson in that bus, and laughing when our translator told them that there are Americans there and the American embassy is concerned.
Khanna says the issue of Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank will be a moral test for his party.
It is the arrogance of a power that has had no accountability, total impunity.
This is great rhetoric. Yeah, he's not being mealy-mouthed with any of that Netanyahu bullshit, you know, oh, Netanyahu's regime. No. He's being, like, really, really direct here. Like, the Israeli people are fucking psychotic, which, again, true. Like, this is demonstrably true. That's what happens, of course. The people of Germany were fucking psychotic back in 1943 as well. It's the product of a conditioned, propaganda-filled environment. Anyone who argues with this is trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Like, yeah, obviously, the Israeli settlers are psychopaths. The average Israeli, just based on the answers to the questions that they are provided on, like, street polls or whatever, or every time they're asked, any polling agency, man, are incredibly fucking warmongering and bloodthirsty. That is because they have been subjected to non-stop propaganda pushing them in that direction. It doesn't really have anything to do with their innate characteristics. There's also a selection bias because a ton of people have moved from, like, America over to Israel specifically because they want to kill Arabs. Like, people have gone and signed up with the IDF or gone and become settlers in the West Bank because they like the idea of being, you know, being like these kids. Like, getting to hold a rifle and just, like, raid and kill and rape Palestinians with reckless abandon.
Of a power that has had...
Yeah, exactly like what white racists did in Rhodesia. Exactly the same thing. Rhodesia did the exact same thing that Israel does, where in order to raise more, like, militant whites, they started putting, like, magazine ads. Literally, like, here, Rhodesia magazine ads. You would get them in, like, gun magazines or like, world travel magazines, shit like this. And you know what? They did Woke One as well. Not really Woke One. I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here. But yeah, the Soldier of Fortune magazine, which was like a popular, like, sort of military pro-colonial magazine back in the day, would run ads from Rhodesia, where they would be like, hey, do you want a like gigantic swath of land? Do you want, with your white Aryan brothers, do you want to hold ancestral white people land in Africa? They did the exact same thing. An ad from the Rhodesian National Tourist Board.
No accountability, total impunity, and has created a toxic culture of oppression.
Yippee. Anyway, yeah, no, pretty crazy. This might end up being like a keystone moment for a presidential run. Exactly the same thing in South Africa too. The difference is that when Rhodesia and South Africa did this, they didn't get to do it with American tax dollars backing them up. Look at that, a fucking Confederate flag. Africa South. I mean, they weren't wrong, right? The American South, the Confederate flag, you got to go over there and basically have slaves. And Godspeed to Ro Khanna. I'd support him.